Kathleen Kennedy, we all know as the president of Lucasfilm and executive producer of all Star Wars content since 2012. She has faced much disapproval and hatred from fans. We hear all the time and time again, Kathleen Kennedy doesn't understand Star Wars. She's ruined Star Wars. She's run it to the ground. She disrespected George Lucas's original script for the sequel trilogy, threw it in the trash, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. What did she do to rile up so many people? And why do people hate her so much? This has been going on for 8 years. Prior to Disney buying Star Wars, the company was run by George Lucas. He too has a history of resentment by Star Wars fans. Remember that? George Lucas ruined my childhood. George Lucas killed the Star Wars franchise. George Lucas made Vader a sissy. We've all heard it. Is the seat of the Star Wars throne cursed? A lot of people miss George Lucas. I mean, I'm one of them. I love George Lucas. He's my hero. He's my idol. But a lot of people miss him because they want him to return to Star Wars to save the franchise. What's funny is some of those people are actually also some of the people that accused him of ruining Star Wars, which is kind of ironic. Kathleen Kennedy, George Lucas, they have one thing in common. They are scapegoats. When something goes wrong, they get the blame, sometimes rightfully so. Kathleen Kennedy is the person in charge after all. But what about when something good happens? Who's to thank? Well, we thank Dave Filoni for saving Clone Wars. We thank Jon Favreau for making The Mandalorian and carrying what was the remains of the sequel trilogy on his back and resurrecting it. So I want to talk about Kathleen Kennedy today because I want to really reflect on what she has done to Star Wars, but also what she has done for Star Wars, good and bad. But hopefully I can shed some light on her achievements. So if you're someone who really does not like Kathleen Kennedy, that's okay. I'm sure you have good reasons. I would hope so. But if you're someone who wants to maybe change their mind or hear about some of the good things she's done, well, I welcome you to listen to the rest of this episode, because I first want to talk about the history of Hollywood. And you would be remiss if you spoke on the history of Hollywood and you didn't mention Kathleen Kennedy's name. She has brought to life some of the most amazing movies we know and love, and a lot of us has to do with our childhood. She produced Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park, Schindler's List. That's just to name a few. She's brought some of the biggest, best, most cherished movies of all time and helmed them from a producial standpoint, from a creative standpoint. She is a movie maker. She's a producer. That's the role of a producer, is to foresee the development and the creation of a script, finding the team, putting together a great team, and making a great product out of it. And George Lucas knew this. George Lucas picked her specifically to run Lucasfilm when he chose to retire. Now, we have to talk about, we're getting to the point where people think that Kathleen ruined Star Wars. But when you talk about this, you have to understand that, when she was brought in to take over Lucasfilm, she was approached by George Lucas to run the company, not knowing that it was also being sold to Disney. So she was coming into it thinking that she would have full creative control, which may have included the fact that maybe she did want to make George Lucas's sequel trilogy the way he outlined it. Maybe she wanted to respect that decision that he asked, I hope you would honor this and make these movies for me. Maybe she did want to do that. But we also have to remember, Kathleen Kennedy, while she is the top of the food chain at Lucasfilm, she still has bosses above her. Bob Iger, for example, at the time of the Lucasfilm acquisition, he was running Disney. He was chairman of the board. He was the president of the company. He's the one who made the call to purchase. And while Kathleen didn't know that Lucasfilm was being sold to Disney, Bob Iger also didn't know that the reins of the president of Lucasfilm was being passed on to Kathleen Kennedy. So you had two parties that didn't know that they were being conjoined together. This could have caused major problems because both of them might have had different directions they wanted to take the company, and all of a sudden, they had to merge together and find a way to compromise. But in the end, Bob Iger and the heads of Disney have the final say on what happens to the future of Star Wars. So, knowing this going forward, we have to remember, while Kathleen Kennedy does deserve some blame for some of the things that have happened, she also is answering to people that are much higher above her, and that she also has to obey some certain rules, some of which she might not even approve of. But we have to remember that without Kathleen Kennedy, we wouldn't have the Star Wars we have today. Now, you might be someone out there who really doesn't like any of the Star Wars that was created by Disney. You could be someone out there who only dislikes certain things about Star Wars under Disney. I, for example, you all know this, I talk about it all the time, I'm so sorry for bringing it up again. I do not like The Last Jedi at all. There's nothing about it I like. But I do love The Force Awakens. I do like The Mandalorian. I love the animated series that they've done. There's a lot of stuff I do love about it. But you can still love something and dislike something at the same time. But where do I send my blame, for example, for The Last Jedi? Now, a lot of people assume I would hate Rian Johnson because of that. I do disapprove of a lot of the things he chose to do in that movie. But my blame does not fall on Rian Johnson. That does fall on Kathleen Kennedy. Now, this is an example for what I think she should receive criticism for, because when she was approached by Rian Johnson to make a Star Wars movie, Rian Johnson actually came up to her and said, I have an idea for a whole new idea of a Star Wars movie. It doesn't have to do with the Skywalkers. It doesn't have to do with your sequels. It's a new Star Wars movie of a actual new galaxy in this world with all new characters and a whole new story. And she actually said, that's a great idea. Can you implement that into episode 8? And I will give you an opportunity to write a sequel movie. Now, if you're in Ryan's position, how in the world are you going to turn that down? You're not. You get the opportunity of a lifetime to make a Star Wars movie. And he was also mandated to make a movie that was going to be completely different and subverting expectations of audiences. Now, while I do understand that at the time, Kathleen Kennedy, that is something that she wanted to see. And I do understand why you would want to do that. That's what The Empire Strikes Back did. That's what the prequels did in a way. Well, they failed, a lot of people would say, but that is what the prequels did. She gave him that assignment. And it wasn't his originally intended movie to make, but he made the movie he wanted to make, and they were both very happy with the results. But it didn't please, I would say, half of the fan base. I know that might seem a little far-fetched, but I do believe that movie is right down the middle of people that do and do not like it. Going back to how, we wouldn't have the Star Wars we would have today, while I didn't like The Last Jedi, I do love The Force Awakens. And I realized that I would not have The Force Awakens if Kathleen Kennedy was not in charge of Lucasfilm. I wouldn't have The Mandalorian if it wasn't for Kathleen Kennedy's running of the ship. But most importantly, what a lot of fans love is Clone Wars coming back and finishing out the series with Season 7. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Clone Wars was dead. It was completely dead, never to be revitalized ever again, until the fans spoke up and said they want them to finish Clone Wars, save Clone Wars. There was a hashtag Save Clone Wars going around everywhere, and they wanted Dave Filoni to finish it. And Dave Filoni actually said that if it wasn't for Kathleen Kennedy, they would have never gotten the chance to finish the Clone Wars. She had to fight the heads of Disney, not physically. Don't get the wrong impression. Like a fist fight with Bob Iger. That would actually be really fun to watch. I would like to see that. But she had to fight with the heads of Disney to be able to make Clone Wars finally come to an end. And I commend her for that. And it turned out great, and everybody loved it. And she doesn't get the credit for that. Dave Filoni gets most of the credit for that. Yes, he's the creator. But Kathleen Kennedy was the producer on that project, and she should receive equal credit. But she's often in the shadow of her own failures, which is understandable because she is the head of the company. So there are some justifications there, but at the same time, you have to realize that she has accomplishments as well that are hindered by the loud noises of everyone saying that they hate Kathleen Kennedy. And you also have to remember she's running a studio. Lucasfilm is technically a studio, which would make her a studio head. She was transitioning from a producer role to a studio head role. Like I said earlier, Kathleen Kennedy is a filmmaker at heart, and she knows how to make a movie. She knows how to bring together a team to make a great product and see it through developmental stages and productional. She was not only running a company when they purchased Lucasfilm, but she was also producing the sequel movies and the spin-off movies and all the TV shows, all while running a giant company that is a leader in visual effects and in animation and all of this stuff, and answering to Disney. So she was overloaded. And to think that while she was doing all of these things, she was still able to provide us with more Star Wars while we were doing this, I commend her for that as well. Now, again, I'm not saying that we should just, that you should only praise Kathleen Kennedy. I just believe that some people out there don't see some of the good that she's done, and I really hope that this episode can bring some light to that. So I think that it's a good thing we do have Kathleen Kennedy in this position, and I think she's worked hard for this. And she fights for Star Wars, and that's what we need in a leadership role, such as one at the president of Lucasfilm. We need someone who will fight for Star Wars.